What's going on, everybody? We are back once again with another edition of Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast. It's a Thursday, May 11th, 2023. It's a Throwback Thursday. I'm here with my esteemed colleague, head of opinions, Anthony Ricciardi. Ricciardi, how are you doing? See, I got it right this time. How are you doing this fine Thursday, my friend?
I'm doing well. It's been a long week. Still got another day left, but I always look forward to these shows. So, and this was a Dynamite that you and I watched together last night. So, some of the comments were probably going to be repeats for us.
Oh, no question, my friend. And it was fun watching last night. I thought it was a great show, and we'll get into that. But we've got a fun throwback topic today too. Yep. You know, the inception of TNA, which is now Impact. Mm-hmm. So we'll go over some of that history on the tail end of this show. But before we get to that, let's get right into Dynamite, and let's start right with the main event. Yep. We're all looking forward to Moxley versus Omega. Once again, two of the keyest cogs in AEW's system, the two of the biggest dogs in the yard and inside of a steel cage. And I thought it delivered. Coming out of it, though, the main storyline is that Jekyll, Don Callis, once again proves he is scum of the earth and takes the screwdriver right into Kenny's head. The big turn. I'm gonna give the form right to you, Anthony, and ask you your thoughts, because I think I was blown away. How did you feel about it?
I really liked the match. I thought it really delivered. When they first booked it, I was a little confused of why they would book it on a Dynamite, a steel cage match, but it absolutely delivered. It's one of the things, not to toot my own horn here, but it was on one of these Throwback Thursday episodes. We were reviewing a Dynamite. It was when Don did the flop, pretending like Hangman hit him. And I remember saying to you on this show, going, I have a feeling Don's turning heel. Now, I think he's going to end up being with the Combat Club and be the invisible hand, why they've turned heel and all of a sudden. But at least one half of what I thought was going to happen has happened with Don turning heel. Although they didn't put him with the Combat Club right away, but I still think that's the direction it's probably going to go.
Yeah, it's funny. William Regal's shoes are nearly impossible to fill. Like, right? Lord Regal, I mean, he's a legend. Don Callis, resume-wise, it's about as close as you could get that's currently available. That isn't retired or signed elsewhere or not interested or too old to do it.
Yep.
Don Callis is probably the next logical choice to lead a group of savages like the Blackpool Combat Club was probably originally intended to be.
Right? Exactly. And that was one of the things I said to you last night. I said, in a lot of ways, Don Callis is AEW's Paul Heyman, in that he's a heel manager that you love to hate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember yelling at him at All Out 21, and it was hilarious. He turned and smirked at me. It was awesome. I cracked me up. I called him names I can't even say on this podcast, and he loved every second of it. It was perfect. It was pro wrestling's finest. Yeah. I actually got a similar reaction from Matt Menard at this previous year's All Out. I called him a bad word too, and he enjoyed it. It was funny. There's nothing better than heckling pro wrestlers.
And then the next day you bought him an Egg McMuffin, didn't you?
I did. We shared an Egg McMuffin. It was delightful. Shout out Matt Menard. And McDonald's while we're up. It's one of those things for me where Callis turning makes perfect sense if you're going to keep the elite baby faces. Here's what I really want to get into, though, is how does this affect Takeshita and his short-lived partnership with Kenny? Does he turn as well because of his association with Don? And if he does this lead to Ibushi and maybe Hangman joining the elite inside of Blood and Guts next month?
It's interesting because I remember saying to you, and I don't remember if it was on the show or off air, when Takashita got brought in for this, and I said I thought this was an odd choice because you figure Hangman's the logical one because they've been teasing it, and so was Ibushi because he's a free agent. It does make sense, like you said, if they did turn Takashita heel, to bring in Hangman and or Ibushi to join this thing. But at the same point, if Takashita is going to be a heel, it would make sense to have Don as his mouthpiece. Because I don't know. Does Takashita, and correct me if I'm wrong, is he fluent in English, or is he kind of struggle with it? Because I don't really remember seeing a promo with him.
As far as I know, he can speak some, and
Okay.
and has worked on it, but I haven't seen him cut a full English promo.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I really haven't seen him cut a promo, so it would make sense that Don would be a mouthpiece. It makes sense. We've said we always knew this was probably going to Blood and Guts. Like this was going to AEW's version of War Games. Right. We knew it, that it was going to be the Elite and the Combat Club, because realistically, there really is no other stable for them to really kind of do this with. They've tasseled. They've done it with Jericho's previous iterations.
Yeah,
the
JS has been in almost every one.
Yeah, I mean, what was the Inner Circle before? They did the Stadium Series. Yeah. They did the other ones. Right. So, really, they're not going to really do House of Black. I mean, they could have done that, but Combat Club made the most sense. But in a lot of ways, the Combat Club really kind of, for me, it's a full stable now. Like it's a legit stable, because one of the complaints I said to you when Regal was doing it with them, it didn't feel like a real stable, because when one was in trouble, sometimes they would come out, other times they wouldn't. Like now they're an actual unit where they're rabid dogs. Like this is what the stable's supposed to be, not that loose friendship that they kind of had during the Regal era.
They definitely feel significantly more like a team nowadays than they did in the first iteration. I do think, though, being baby faces, that there was some sense in not having them necessarily try to do the strength in numbers thing and holding off on that. I do think there's a little bit of logic there. Well, at the time, it was odd. Like, why aren't you sticking up for your guys? Because of the depth of the group, I wonder if they kind of messed themselves around. And I'm just kind of thinking, spitballing, but like, I'm wondering if they didn't really think through, like, well, strength and numbers wise, it's hard to outnumber the Blackpool Combat Club if you aren't isolating a single member on the babyface side, and that kind of put them in a corner where there's not much you can do, right? When you put 5 likable dudes in a group, if they can all stick up for each other all the time, then how are they being threatened? You know, and that's hard to book, I think.
It was just sure. It would be difficult, but at the same point, I don't really recall any other babyface stable that, from my recollection, where they didn't have each other's back at all times. Like it was just a very strange booking in my opinion, because I can't think of anybody else, like of any other stable that really had that problem.
I will say, though, dating back to like the red and black versus black and white NWO days, the black and white were isolating members of the Wolfpack because they were the smaller group.
Well, obviously,
but at that time, obviously we have, in hindsight, the complaints about, well, the NWO got too big, and yes, for sure. But the fact that the black and white had the numbers advantage still, despite the Wolfpack having, 5 strong baby faces, despite that, the black and white had the strength in numbers the whole way. And I think that's something that, unless they were feuding with the JAS where it's 5-on-5, it's hard to send out the group to defend them. I don't think it's even a not had their back. I think they tried to book it in a way where it was supposed to be like isolated scenarios. Like, oh, we trust our guys, send them out there, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, when we weren't there, and they didn't tell that story enough. But that's the only way I could see you storytelling your way out of that corner.
let me get your take on something that's a little off topic, but since we're talking about it anyway, what's your feeling with like groups? Like again, like the NWO Black and White, it got too big. To me, I don't think a group should be any bigger than 5 or 6 members, because I think anything more than that, it loses its eliteness. Like, what's your thought on that?
I have no issue with a large group.
Okay.
I would go a little bit bigger than 5 or 6.
Okay.
If they're heels. I think on the heel side, strength in numbers is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have 5 strong members, maybe a men's main eventer, maybe a tag team, maybe a mid-card potential contender, maybe a potential women's champion, as your 5. If we're getting to 6, maybe a young up-and-comer in that spot, maybe a prospect more of. And then I don't mind 2 or 3 extra lackeys. Because when the baby faces get their comeuppances, that's who takes the bumps.
I get you.
And you still are able to book towards great matches on the cards. So while I agree with you on it can get out of hand if you're booking talents that are in the same division, I would say, in the same category, in the same part of their careers. I don't have an issue with 5 strong wrestlers and 3 or 4 lackeys. That's fine with me.
But in that situation, the focus is on the 5. Like, so it's still the 5. So you're fine with the, like, you wouldn't feel the same way if it's 8 members and all 8 are trying to get the,
are trying to be equal strength. They would compete against each other. That's where you get lost in the shuffle.
That's my point.
5 on equal standing. And on the babyface side, I think it needs to be even smaller. I think the New Day is the only example of a group on that side. I think 3 is the perfect number. If you're going to be a babyface group, 3 is the perfect number. And even the Freebirds rule, I never think should have applied to the New Day. As much as I love them, that's the only thing that's ever bothered me that they've done is the Freebirds rule. That's a heel rule. It's a heel rule.
The Freebirds
you get the 2 rested ones to wrestle. We have 3, you have 2. That's unfair. Well, and the babyface should always be fighting from underneath. In my eyes, that's just the way I look at wrestling.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that is a huge flaw, babyface stable wise.
I think when you look at it, and a little side note because we're talking about it, like 3-man groups, I think the Shield may be arguably probably the best 3-man group,
no doubt.
But the other one that's very interesting to me is, if you, of course, you remember the Undisputed Era. It was originally 3 members.
Right.
It was Red Dragon and Adam Cole, and we thought how phenomenal they were. They couldn't possibly get any better. Then Roddy got added in, and they became like the best 4-man stable since probably the Horsemen, as far as like a 4-man group.
I always believed, to be completely honest, and this is going to be out of left field.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I thought the coolest thing they could ever do, alternate universe.
Yeah.
They get called up to the main roster as Undisputed Era.
Yep.
Make Keith Lee the 5th. Make Keith Lee the 5th. Then you have your big man, your enforcer, and they're the heel group that just destroys people. They just destroy people. You've got Keith Lee, the big dog. You've got the 2 technicians in the tag team. You've got your mid-card talent, and you've got Adam Cole. Goodness gracious sakes alive, that was a missed opportunity. That would have been outstanding.
Here's my question for you with that. I feel like part of the appeal for the Undisputed Era, I know we're going off track, but whatever. Part of the appeal was we knew their history as a unit, as members of Ring of Honor. Like Keith Lee technically was in Ring of Honor short term. Right. I'm thinking if you didn't go Keith Lee, why wouldn't you go Damian Priest?
Fine too, or Dijak.
Dijak's another perfect example.
Just a big guy.
Yes.
Just a big guy to go odd number, heel stable,
Ring of Honor ties.
I'm totally with you. Yes. Yeah. And the other thing is main roster, because I love the Ring of Honor ties, and I'm with you on that 100%. I think main roster wise, the way it's looked at, it's not that it doesn't matter, but just that's the way you could add one more and get away with it, where we're like, okay, it's fine. Like, I'm glad they're all called up,
Yes.
And that would be a group where you could easily have, whether it be Fish and O'Reilly, no matter which team you want to form,
Yes.
you could have 2 tag team contenders there.
Yeah.
There's so many stories to be told. You have your mid-card talent in any of the ones that aren't Adam Cole.
Yeah, I mean,
You got your main event talent in Cole, and then you got Keith Lee, who you can slide across the board and is the enforcer, and then you have the eventual turn down the road. And that would have been gold. That's a missed opportunity to say the least.
But like, just in general, like the Undisputed Era, I think the Undisputed Era, as far as, since the full circle here, assuming that, if Bobby Fish was still there and Kyle was healthy and stuff like that, like that's the group realistically I think we all wanted. We wanted the Elite, and Hangman as part of the Elite against Undisputed Era. I mean, realistically, that's the match. That's what we wanted for Blood and Guts. Realistically, if you're fantasy booking, that's the match. And the Combat Club is an adequate submission, replacement for that. I mean, we still want that other match. It's probably never going to happen because we don't know what Kyle's health is. Bobby's obviously not in the company, which is nothing to bring him back, but just in general. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so then let's move along. Next match we had, not in order, but next match we're covering Anna Jay versus Julia Hart, which I was really excited about. I think Julia deserves her flowers. I think she's done awesome work. Turning heel, completely changing her character, going out on a limb, being so young and so talented and so athletic. Total difference between her cheerleading character and her House of Black character. The question here, Anthony, is, was this match too short?
That's been the problem in AEW, and I don't mean to be burying anything on that, but they really don't give their women's wrestlers a lot of TV time. And when they do, it tends to be, it's either a bigger match if there's like somebody like Britt involved, but like a match like this, it's like, 5 minutes, you're done. It's a shame because they do have talent there that could carry a longer segment. Now, I don't know what the segment by segment ratings are. Maybe that's part of the reason why they rush these matches. But, I think they deserve better than that. And it's funny because watching All Access AEW show, which I mentioned this to you last night, I had all these ones saved on the DVR and since like Mania week, since, I went out and hung out with you in California, I hadn't had time to watch them, and I ended up binging like all of them except, the one last night that we watched together. One of the things that Britt was complaining about on those things is that the women don't get a lot of TV time. So it's kind of funny that like I just watched that where like she's saying that too, that we don't get a lot of TV time, and seeing what happened last night. So it's a shame. Hopefully one of the things we did see last night, they teased Thunder Rosa, so maybe that will inject something into this women's division.
100%. And I agree with you on the not enough time thing. I will say last night though, and I'm going to cut to myself here, I thought last night was short and sweet, to be honest. And I normally would have a problem with it, but given the way Julia's been portrayed as just this wicked, almost I wish, if Scarlett's going to wrestle in the WWE, this is the character she should be trying to play.
Yeah.
This is right. The vicious, that heartless submission on top of the chairs was ruthless. Anna Jay's the larger woman, but I believed it. Right?
Yes.
I believed it from Julia last night. And I will say, more time would have been great. But with the time they had, it was good enough for me to advance Julia Hart. I only worry that it hurt Anna Jay because of how short it was. That's where I run into trouble, is like Anna Jay has built herself up so much and done such great work over the last couple of years. And it's so cool of her to put Julia over in that way. It was such a great match. But at the end of the, not great match, but it was really good for what it was.
Yes.
For the time they were given, it was very well executed. I just worry that it hurts Anna Jay a little bit. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday on the show. Anna Jay was a heel just so recently. I don't know if she was the right choice to be on the other end of this loss. But let's move along to the next one, Anthony. Make one last point.
The one last point that I want to make is, and this is my only concern, is that I want to see AEW follow up with this stuff. Like, I don't want it to be a situation where Julia won and then she doesn't wrestle again for a couple of weeks. Like, things need to be done for a reason, not just a match because it fills the slot. Like, you should be building something there. But that's
I agree. But I will say, I do think that they kind of built Julia to this crescendo. Not to extend this conversation, which I was trying not to.
No, I know.
But they kind of have over the last few years since the turn. And so I think that there are big plans for Julia Hart. And I think this is one of those exceptions to that issue. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But speaking of her House of Black brethren, her House of Black friends, in the next one we're going to cover versus Bandito and the Best Friends. Awesome on paper match.
Yes.
Did you like the gimmick? They turned the lights out. I'm going to go first.
Go ahead.
Why are we doing this still? People don't like it. It doesn't look as good. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't benefit the aesthetics. It doesn't make the House of Black look scarier. I don't stop it. You can turn the lights on and off and do all that for entrances and surprise run-ins and all kinds of stuff. Turning them off for the whole match. And like blue lighting or red lighting or whatever lighting, done with it. Stop it. Stop. Because this match was probably awesome under normal circumstances, but I couldn't watch it the same way because of the lighting personally. I just couldn't. But I want to get your thoughts, Anthony. Did you enjoy any of the lighting?
To me, it's a cheap little gimmick thing. I've always hated, because you mentioned red light, I absolutely hated with a passion when they did the red light for the Fiend matches. When WWE did that, like, I hated
awful.
it. The absolute worst was the Hell in a Cell because it's literally red. So it made it that much worse. But with this, like, if it was like a one-off, if it was a pay-per-view thing and they were doing it as a one-off special, like it's a lights out match, you know, to emphasize like hardcore, because that's what they typically do with the lights out matches. Doing this just for the sake of doing it, it doesn't do anything for me. The other thing, and I know you love to bury this, and I have too, you know, the whole damage control. Why are they together? I feel that with Bandito and the Best Friends. I don't understand why they're together. I don't understand the pairing of this group.
That is such a great point. Don't they also have an extra best friend, Orange Cassidy, who, yes, we saw wrestle last night, but still. That's their other friend. That's the third guy. Like, they're just like, yeah, let's get Bandito while we're hot. I'm so with you on that. I do not get that at all.
I don't get the pairing.
Why? Yeah.
There's no.
Why are the best friends with Bandito?
I mean, it doesn't.
How did they meet
sense.
him? Now, by the way, I do think there is an outstanding comedy skit between the Best Friends and Bandito to explain their friendship. And if they do that, then both you and I deserve to eat crow. I think because now the wheels are really spinning. And I'm like, man,
if they do a segment when Bandito speaking Spanish, and Danhausen interpreting what he's saying, I'm completely fine with that.
Honestly,
but as of right now, it's just they're together with. Now, granted, I don't watch the YouTube stuff. Like, maybe it's explained on Being the Elite. I have no idea. But for the general audience that's just watching Dynamite, no one knows why they're together other than their baby faces.
I agree, but I'm telling you, I think the move is even better than just Danhausen translating. You have Bandito walk up to the Best Friends, and he speaks Spanish to them, and they speak English back to him, but they understand each other. So, like, it's in subtitles, but then the conversation goes down the whole scene. That's the way it has to work. They somehow just understand. I know I'm not, but I'm like, please, AEW, if you guys can do that, that'd be electric.
But we are completely fine writing this sketch for you if you want us to.
That's free. That one's on me, but call me for the next one.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the last AEW match we're going to cover before we get a throwback. It is Thursday. But my I don't want to say personal favorite, but one of my personal favorite wrestlers in AEW, Rey Fenix, against Claudio Castagnoli, double Jeopardy match, 15 minutes, curtain jerker out of the gates, absolute banger as we expected. Phoenix is so dang good. You can't even make it up how good that dude is. He's got every move. He's got every trick in the bag. He's got all of them. On Halloween, he doesn't trick or treat. He trick and treats. He's got all of them. He's got every single one.
Yep.
You can just check off the list. He can do everything
so
well. It blows me away every time because we talk about you and I have been so impressed by Vikingo Commander.
Yes.
The Bucks on the WWE side, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, even like guys, you know what I mean? It's not just simply the flying, the acrobatics, all of that. Bell to bell acumen. Phoenix is as good as freaking anyone.
And listen, he's got a crappy gimmick, but if we're talking athleticism,
I don't even know if he has a gimmick. I don't know.
No, I'm not talking about Phoenix, but from the WWE side, I mean a horrible gimmick. Reggie,
yes,
athletically, he's
remarkable.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Go ahead,
100%. No, yeah. And I'm like, and Phoenix is like close to that level of athleticism, but he sells like Shawn Michaels, and we overlook it because his brother Penta is amazing. Penta is world class as well. Yeah. Penta doesn't sell the same.
No.
Penta gets himself in trouble on the waiting outside the ring and a few things he does. Phoenix doesn't do that stuff. Doesn't have to. Yeah. Phoenix sells a super kick as well as he gives one. Phoenix gives that back heel kick. The way he puts his head down and spins the heel kick around, arguably as cool as Malachi Black does. He throws the second best 1B in spinning heel kicks. We don't even talk about that move. Cutters wise, he's on Orton and Cody level. The way he does everything he does on the top rope, off the charts.
I think in a lot of ways, and it's a shame when you look at the Lucha Brothers, and I like Pentagon, I really do.
Same.
I think he's gotten more of the press because of the character, especially from Lucha Underground. And I know Ray was on there too, but like Pentagon was essentially the face of Lucha Underground.
He is a few years older too, right? Anthony?
He's a few years older, and
which is part of it, I think.
He was champion in Lucha Underground. I believe he's a former Impact World Champion. Ray, like from belt to belt, like if you're looking at pure talent wise, Ray's the better of the two, but I just don't think he gets the recognition. I mean, he is better in the ring than the Pentagon, and I like Pentagon a lot, but Pentagon has like the more compelling character. Rey Fenix is more of and I don't mean this insultingly, but he's just a luchador. Like there's nothing, no uniqueness to, like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like Pentagon,
I'll say this,
zero fear and all that other stuff.
I think to your point though, Phoenix being the younger brother, I think Penta is in the middle or even latter of his prime.
Yeah.
I don't think Rey Fenix has even hit I don't think he's even approached the beginning of his prime yet because he's only like 27.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, Ray really hasn't changed his character. Pentagon has changed his character. He's gotten darker. He's done different things, and I like Rey Fenix so much. I want to see a match with him and Vikingo, but focusing on the Claudio Phoenix match, I love that. I think that might have been one of the best opening like weekly TV matches to start a program in wrestling. I think it was a solid match, and it's a trend that I see as a whole in all of wrestling, and I think it's at least from, I want to say post-Mania, like the post-Raw Mania onward, and even in Impact or whether it's AEW, whatever. I don't know if you've noticed it too. It seems like the shows are mainly focusing on opening with a great thing and closing with a great thing. And then in the middle, it's sometimes it's really good, other times not. But like they really seem to be focusing on the beginning and the end.
I agree, but I actually think last night was one of the few times they got that right. While the
No, I know I
in
did.
the end were
I
great,
think so, they did.
right? Yeah, like
yes,
given Miro, Rosa,
yes,
and then I know we mentioned actually pre-show talking about the 4 pillar stuff.
yes.
I mean, that was middle of the show.
Yeah.
It was outstanding. The whole the middle of this show, the bridge stuff. And you know what I think the key was last night compared to other Dynamites that we've watched?
Yes.
It never felt rushed.
No, it didn't.
It really did. Other than, of course, we complained about Julia and Anna Jay being too short.
Mm-hmm.
That's the closest it felt to rushed.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was rushed, but not that rushed.
What I loved with the 4 pillar promo, the promos were, I mean, MJF was absolutely phenomenal with his, and he always is, but all 4 of them were done differently to show the uniqueness. Now, the only one that I complained to you last night with, I would have preferred Sammy speaking on his own. Having Jericho on there, and one of the things Jericho said was, no, Sammy's not a lackey. And I'm going, that conflicts with the narrative that Sammy himself gave, which was that essentially he was assigned to Jericho's groups to be the lackey and the guy to take the losses. So to me, it conflicted with the narrative they're trying to portray of him being, not a star, to be the guy to take the beatings for Jericho. Like, I didn't think Jericho needed to be on that. I felt like I get it from the one perspective of going, well, here's a legend promoting him, and he knows Sammy. But I really thought it would have been stronger if Sammy's standing on his own. I mean, Darby did his. It wasn't like Sting was on it. So to me, I would have preferred Sammy speaking for himself. That's just my take on that.
I totally hear where you're coming from, but I will remind you of another lackey, John Lackey, rookie, Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, 2002, started Game 7 of the World Series and won the game. And so don't you discount lackeys. Also, shout out John Lackey and go Cubs, but not the point. Cheap plug. Had to. But either way, I'm actually totally with you on that. Because I actually thought once Sammy got into his own part of the speech, he did an amazing job. I also thought Time Mello, watching that All Access episode, totally separate from Dynamite, but looked so cool last night. She was awesome.
I mean, All Access is a great show. I would prefer if they provided a little bit more. Like there were points during that series where they're showing them, but they're not showing them talking. I'm like, all these are past events. Like
I do understand wanting to not give too much though, which I appreciate.
But in all fairness, like you're showing a conversation with Britt Baker with Saraya, having a conversation. Meanwhile, they're technically talking about the feud.
True, 100%.
So like stuff like that. I'm this is all past. This is stuff that already happened. So what secret are you hiding? Because we've already
hear where you're coming from there.
So just from that perspective. But anyway,
absolutely. Okay, wait. Before we get into our final topic, though, I think we can both agree. Favorite quote from last night's episode: Ty Mello with when Sammy asks her, "Why are you limping?" Because it hurts. Best line. That's iconic. It was awesome. It was hilarious.
It hurts. It's hard. There's something that it was.
No, I think she said because it hurts.
Yeah.
He goes, "Why are you limping?" She goes, "Because it hurts."
Yeah. I mean, it's great. I mean, it was right after her match with
because it's hard or something like that. Yeah. No, but either way, let's dive straight into throwback topic.
Yes,
you ready?
And that's funny because you just mentioned 2002 with John Lackey. 21 years ago this week. By the way, this is incredibly difficult for everybody when we try to come up with throwback topics. When we were first doing it, it was just we were just throwing it. Okay, we want to talk about this. Now we're actually trying to, find stuff for the specific week. We'll see what happens. Couldn't find anything specific to today, but worth talking about anyway. But 21 years ago this week, Jeff Jarrett formally announced that he was going to launch a new promotion. And it eventually became TNA, which is now Impact today. But the part that that Clark and I could talk about, unlike a lot of other people with Wrestling Republic that weren't watching back then. Why that was so significant is because literally months prior, about a year prior, WCW and ECW both went under. So the only major U.S. promotion that was going on during that time was WWE. So to have another landing spot for talent was a huge thing. It would eventually become they started out, they did weekly pay-per-views. I think they were $9.99 a week. I don't know how. I think they were like 2 to 3 hours long, I think. I can't specifically say because, quite honestly, at that time, I did not have the money to buy weekly pay-per-views, so I've never actually seen them. I've seen clips of them. I do have Impact Plus, so at some point I'm going to try to watch some of them. I'm sure Clark's going to probably want to join me when I do that. But
well, by the way, I got to tell a quick story.
Go ahead.
That will crack you up about those years. Mm-hmm. So my first experience with TNA, total nonstop action wrestling, of course it is.
Formerly with the NWA.
My mom,
they originally lost.
My mother and my little sister were out of town on a girls' trip. And I'm at home, just me and my dad. And, it's night. We're watching TV. We're kind of flipping around channels, trying to figure stuff out. He's looking around. He's flipping through everything. He gets down to the pay-per-views. And he goes, TNA wrestling. He goes, that must be some kind of dirty video. And I was in middle school. So, I giggled like, of course it is. Like, thinking of what TNA normally stands for, which, of course, in hindsight, we know is why they chose the letters. But I'll never forget he hit info on the guide.
Yeah.
And he goes, wait a minute. It's all the old WCW guys we used to like. And I go, no way. He goes, yeah. I go, well, that's awesome. He goes, should we watch it? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, it's only, I forget what it was. It was like $19.99 or maybe even $9.99.
No, if you're talking about the weekly ones, it was $9.99.
Yeah, it was $9.99. He goes, it's only $9.99. And he goes, hey, wait, Clark, 1 second. He goes, go in the hallway in case this is accidentally a dirty video. And put it on. Of course it's not. It's TNA Wrestling. First time I ever saw the 3 Live crew. Yeah. My introduction to R-Truth, a.k.a. Ron the Truth Killings. He was teaming with Conan and the Road Dogg at the time in the 3LK. And they were in, I believe, the co-main event that night. We had Monty Brown. That was my a.k.a. Marcus Cordon. First time I ever saw him. Billy Gunn was back in the fold as Kip something.
Kip James.
Kip James. Yeah. An interesting name. One of the funniest wrestling watching experiences. And then I'll never forget just being stoked about Raven. I'm like, wait, Raven's in it. This is awesome. And was so fired up about that. But yeah, I will never forget watching that show with my dad. It was classic.
Clark, the one thing you did say was you said that was the first time Ron Killings. Don't you remember him as K Quick in WWF with Road Dogg?
No, to be completely honest, this was pre-K Quick.
No, it wasn't. It was after.
Oh, I guess. I'm sorry. You're right. It's post-K Quick, but
pre-return.
Yes. First time as R-Truth or Ron
Killings. Yeah. The first time he went by the name.
No, you're absolutely right. In order, yes, I did see him as K Quick in the 90s. You're right.
I mean, they had a lot of people there, and a lot of people, especially back then, said, "Oh, this is WCW 2.0." Like essentially, if WCW would have survived, this is what it would have been. And especially the other added thing was, when they initially launched, they were tied to the NWA. They used the NWA World Title and the NWA Tag Titles, and and Jeff Jarrett's explained, he's like, because there was prestige there, although publicly, the image was not really that positive because the last time it was on really TV, other than the brief appearances in WWF in the late 90s, was the infamous Shane Douglas throwing the title down after winning the tournament and saying the NWA is dead, I'm ECW world champion or. So this was about trying to rebuild the NWA and the brand or to milk the brand to build TNA. But like you think of like the talent that was there. You know, a young AJ Styles. He was briefly in WCW before it folded. Samoa Joe from Ring of Honor really got his national spotlight there. You know, but Joe came well after the pay-per-view, weekly pay-per-view era.
And to your point, the amount of talent that came out of TNA, we forget CM Punk debuted with Serotonin under Raven
Mickey
in
James.
TNA. Mickey James. How about AJ Styles? AJ Styles. I mean, just start and end there. AJ Styles is TNA. You can't say TNA without saying AJ Styles.
Yep.
If you go back and watch that match reel, it is the best. We were actually robbed as professional wrestling fans in a way by the fact that those were in arenas the size they were and not in freaking stadiums. Not in and this is not TNA's fault. Thank goodness for TNA that we can see him on tape. We can see the talent. We can see how great AJ was. But if you ever doubt how dang good AJ Styles is, how freaking talented that dude is, go back and watch him in TNA. Go back and watch him when he was Crew Cut AJ. Yeah. Because that dude was the best wrestler on the planet before anybody knew his name. And that's the scariest thing about him.
The funny part, I remember the first time I saw AJ in TNA, and I believe the first time I really saw him, I remembered him in WCW, but again, it was a short-lived tag team, WCW folded, so not really there. But it was on Fox Sports Net. That was their first TV deal. And I remember seeing him there and thinking to myself, this is the next Shawn Michaels. This is the guy.
I thought he was, you know how much I love Shawn?
Yeah.
I was like, this guy's better.
Really? You thought he was?
I was freaked out. The first time I saw him in a bell-to-bell banger, I was like, no. That's illegal. Like, not like illegal, but it should be. Yeah. Like, you can't be.
The fact that 21 years later, and I still think as many great matches that they had there, Kurt Angle being there, Christian being there, all the Sting being there, which gave all their careers a second wind. But I still think the best match that's ever happened there was the three-way. AJ, Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe.
I totally agree. I could not agree more. And I think those three names kind of embody what TNA represented.
The Motor City Machine Guns as well.
I would add Abyss.
Abyss, yeah.
And then I would add the Guns as kind of that'd be my Rushmore if you can add two to Rushmore.
Yeah.
It's a wider mountain, guys. Give me a break. I've decided to widen it. If you can add them all, it's Guns, it's Abyss, and then it's Joe, Daniels, AJ. But AJ's, to me, if you say TNA,
he's the
my mind immediately is AJ. He's standalone, that great. Now, one we didn't mention, Christian Cage. Christian Cage did a lot of his best work in TNA. He did. Now that's later. Obviously, we're talking about the inception.
Yeah.
And AJ was kind of there from the beginning, but can't mention TNA without mentioning Christian Cage. We already covered Raven. I'm trying to think. Did we? Mike Tenay, of course. Don West.
Yeah, Don, the great. It's such a shame we lost Don. Like Don, it was one of those ones that, and I probably when we get close to Slammiversary in June, we'll probably cover more of Impact. The history. We kind of just wanted to cover the initial, but Don West. Look, I remember seeing Don West on the Home Shopping Network or QVC. I don't remember which one he worked for, but I remember Don West when I went to WrestleMania 15 and they sold out of WrestleMania shirts. And when I went home that night, they were selling the shirts on the Home Shopping Network or QVC, and he was the guy selling them.
Oh, that's great.
So the first time I remember seeing Don, I was like, wait, that was the guy that was selling the WWF shirts back
that's
that
awesome.
Day. And he turned out to be a great color man. And
legendary commentator.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be more with you. We're going to get into more TNA stuff another time because this is too fun of a conversation. Anthony, it's always a blast doing Throwback Thursday with you. Thank you guys for having us. From Wrestling Republic, Clark Taylor, Anthony Ricciardi, nailed it this time. Like, subscribe if you haven't. 5-star review on Spotify. You guys are the best. please leave a comment. It helps us out a ton, and we'll see you guys tomorrow a little earlier, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and
but don't forget
that's going to be 8 o'clock UK.
Don't forget to check out Sold Separately.
Also check out Sold Separately if you haven't. That's our other show. Yes. What am I doing? If we're going to plug it, let's plug everything. Sold Separately. Check it out. Episode 2 coming soon, by the way, too. Just so you know. Heads up.